Zoom recording. That's in effect. Close down that and bring this over here a bit. Okay. Okay, so first things, recording this cohort, that's done. Remember, you can tweet and post to LinkedIn or whichever social channel you want using the hashtags 90-day MC for mentoring challenge and hashtag NZ365 guy. I really appreciate that. We've noticed over the last couple of weeks, a lot of people signing up for 2020. So I was going to do this twice a year, but it's actually a massive time commitment for me. So I have reduced down to doing this only once a year. And so once this one's finished, the next one will be in 2020, all going to plan. Next, mics are muted, so come off mute if you want to chat in the question. We might not have time for questions today, so remember, ask your questions in the Facebook group outside of us not getting to them here. Use chat to engage with each other during the session. Use that effectively. I see there's been a lot of banter going on. It seems to be the Northern Hemisphere has a lot more banter in that session than the Southern Hemisphere for whatever reason. But today we don't even have anybody from the Southern Hemisphere on the call. Keep an eye on Facebook group. Just check if anybody is struggling to get in. Give them a hand if they need with finding the right link to the session. And recordings will be posted in 12 hours. And please, 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 even if you're watching this video on replay, make sure you complete the metrics that matter. And remember, Facebook engagement for assignments. Make sure you put your content up there on completion of your assignments. We've had a lot less last week back in of people completing the assignments. Remember, you learn by doing. That's what the psychologists tell us. That's what the scientists tell us. So keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to get on to brand. And what is brand you? Why do we need a personal brand nowadays? Probably more than ever. And the reason we need a personal brand more than ever in history is that we now work in a global market. We're no longer just working for, you know, the people in our village, which perhaps traditionally we've come from. We're now dealing with a global marketplace. And part of dealing with a global marketplace is that how do you stand out amongst the myriad of people out there with the same skill sets as you have, with the same experiences that you have? How do you stand out in that noise? And one of the ways to do it is by creating a personal brand. Just like Coke wants to stand out and separate itself from Pepsi in a crowded global marketplace, you need to separate yourself from everybody else by creating a personal brand. So fundamentally, I believe in the next 5, 10 years, the world we're moving into, that's why I've got going on this myself, is it will be won or lost. The career that you will have will come down to your personal brand. I fundamentally believe that. I believe it so much. I have invested, particularly the last 2 years, in developing my personal brand. So let me back up and give you my story. So, you know, I started in little old New Zealand. When I finished high school, I didn't go to university. I wasn't that type of smart. And so what happened is that I got a job for my auntie, and it was a groundskeeping job. And so for 3 years, I mowed lawns for one of the most prestigious schools in Auckland, Auckland Grammar. And so the crazy thing is that 3 months I was one of 2 groundskeepers for that. So that means I maintained the rugby fields, the hockey pitches, the cricket pitches, basically everything from the front garden, which, you know, keeping that immaculate right through to every part of the entire school, multiple fields, etc. And there are 2 of us as groundskeepers. Within 3 months, the head groundskeeper resigned. So at 18 years old, I became the head groundskeeper, and I had a 26-year-old working for me. So I learned to get promoted quickly as part of that. So what happened is that after that 3 years, I went and started working in the medical industry. Why? Well, my brother decided to start a company. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll join you. And so we basically tested operating theaters all across New Zealand, anything that required high air quality. So for example, for an operation, an orthopedic type operation, you have to have less than 100 particles per square meter so that the patient doesn't get secondary infected. So that's the kind of air quality at the top of the Himalayas. So there's a whole bunch of smart filtration technology that was needed. I did that for 7 years. And then during that 7 years, the internet was born. And so I got into web design and started my IT training career. I quickly moved into teaching. So this is like, you know, Apache web servers, Linux. I was building Linux, or teaching people how to build Linux based environments, and right down to internet working, which is basically how a packet of information flows across the network through routing technologies, got into Cisco, all these different type of areas. That's kind of where I started. And that progression then led me into Dynamics, which was around 2003, was 2003. So that was kind of my story in a nutshell. And so the thing is that what Dynamics showed me pretty quickly is that if you're at the bottom of the world, how do you engage with Microsoft and Redmond, where all the smarts was happening? How do you get visibility? And I realized that I needed to start to kind of stand out, to not be like all the people that were in America that were really close to Microsoft. How could I actually start, if you like, engaging with the people that could help grow my career in this dynamic space? You know, I fell in love with Dynamics. I chose this niche. I said, right, I'm gonna really bed down on this. Even though I'd been in web design, I decided to kind of leave that. I could have gone for infrastructure. I could have carried on there, but it didn't kind of get me excited like Dynamics did. And so what happened then, I started my own business, started moonlighting in 2005. By 2007, I established Magnetism in New Zealand. And you know, me and I've talked about my business partner back then. I got him out of the company he was working for. It wasn't great, and got him to join me as I kicked off in Magnetism. And that was my first attempt at branding. You know, taking this word magnetism, I was able to even register the trademark on the word magnetism. Now, being that's a scientific term, like what are the chances? But I was able to pull it off successfully, and I started the whole branding. That was my first foray into branding. And then my second attempt was NZ CRM guy. So I became known as NZ CRM guy. And then as I progressed on, I became known as NZ 365 guy. And so I made that a pivot around 2016 where, you know, I use the word pivot, and I just, it's interesting. I was at user group yesterday in London and talking with various people, and some people don't realize, and even what's going on in the community now, you know, Microsoft announced last week internal user rights being disbanded, which is a big deal to a lot of partners, and everybody's crying and the milk is spilt and they're all upset. And it's kind of like, mate, pivot, pivot, pivot. The world's going to keep evolving. It's going to keep carrying on. You need to keep changing into where the world's going. And so what I did here was I pivoted to NZ365 guy. But this time I wanted to make sure it wasn't, so, you know, I had a, you know, somebody look at me on Snapchat and they said, who's NZ Crum guy? Who's this NZ Crum guy? So even CRM to people outside the industry was meaningless to them. And so what I decided, go with NZ365 guy, and I started developing even further my brand, which was like a tagline, helping people reach their full potential. And even my recent iteration of that is kind of connect, learn, and share, which is all associated, if you like, with the branding that I've been creating. So if we take a look at this, my question to you is, when others look at you, who do they see? Because we could talk about all the brand and everything, or the names, etc., but that's not the point. The point is, who do they see when they look at you? Do they see somebody that adds value? Do they see somebody that knows more than them in the technology area you specialize in? If you Googled yourself right now, does what people see online build trust, build credibility, build value around you? Are you findable online, right? Our main communication medium these days is digital, is the internet. All our communication technologies now run across it. So back in the old days, we had the white pages. You could find somebody's phone number and that was about it. Now we have the internet. And so if you, in the myriad of almost 8 billion people in the world, are you findable for the value you bring? And when somebody finds you, and your value, does it build trust, and is it consistent? Does it consistently reflect who you are, or are you two people? Are you somebody different on the weekend than who you are during the week? Are you somebody different with certain people than you are with other people? Does your online presence kind of reflect that same type of thing? Questions, questions, questions for you when considering your brand. But anyhow, let's consider first of all, what's in a name? And why is a name important? It's an identifier, right? It should be searchable. You know, Prince, when he didn't like his name anymore, he changed his name to the artist formerly known as Prince with a question mark. Perhaps it was still searchable, but is your name searchable? When you search for you, are you identified? Not just on Google, not just on Bing, but on the various social media channels that are commonly used these days. What is your brand? How does that stand out? What does it build trust? Does it build value? Do you have a unique identifier? What will people search for to find you? It might not be just names. It might be what you're known for. Do you use your own name, or do you create an alias? And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment, and how I got to where I got to with why I created specifically an alias. Is your name unique? If you Googled it online, would you be in the number 1 to 10 search results? If unique, you can use it. If you Google your name and you rank number 1 in the search engine for sites that you're on, that is awesome. I wish my name was that unique. The problem is it's not. Does your website, blog, whatever you want to call it, we'll go into detail around this, does it have a .com domain name? I remember the first time I was in Redmond, 2012, around March, I just become an MVP, and I was hanging out in the office of one of the marketing managers at Microsoft in the Atlanta campus. David Pennington was the guy's name. And I got introduced in his office talking. He goes, oh, yeah, you're from that company Magnetism, right? Hang on. And he types in magnetism.com. Didn't find me, because I used magnetism.co.nz. And it was my first, that kind of point stuck in my mind, because it was my first point of realizing that we're living in a global world, and just because you can get .co.uk or .co.nz in my case, or .com.au, it's not necessarily what a global audience search for. And now we've got a plethora of domain names. So think about it. It's maybe not as important these days, but my rule of thumb for any time I create a brand, for me, to get the .com is the premium name I always try to go for, website address. Does your social media, on all the social medias, even if you say, listen, I'm not into Pinterest, have you still already camped on your name on Pinterest? Just set up the account, walk away, don't use it again. But in 5 years' time, you might decide you'll want to use it and someone could have taken it. Have you camped on your name, even if you're not going to use it now, but you might use it at a later date? So when I look at me, I had this massively creative name. My parents, with the last name of Smith, chose to call me Mark. Now, here's a little test for you. Without me telling you what my middle name is, without me telling you what letter my middle name starts with, in the chat, see if you can guess what my middle name is. Yay! First answer, correct. My parents are so creative, they called me Mark John Smith. I have asked that question so many times over my lifetime, and I would say more than 80% of people always guess John without knowing my middle name. That's creativity, right? The problem is with this name is that when it comes to search engines, I just get lost in the noise. So what I did about it is I created this. Notice that this is not just NZ365 guy. I have had it stylized. I've had it turned into a mark or a brand, if you like. What's it made up of? First of all, I was born in New Zealand. So that's what the NZ or NZ, depending on which part of the world you come from, comes from. 365, it could be Dynamics, it could be Office. There's 365 days in the year, give or take. So what I found straight away is that people outside the industry still didn't question, like, okay, what was this all about? It kind of, there is logic, if you like, to it. And by the way, I'm a guy. So That was it. When I went to Australia and I worked there for 4 years, everyone said, oh, you're going to change it to AU365 guy. And I'm like, mate, I may be taking their money, but there's no way I'm an Australian. And then when I moved to the UK even, I was asked, are you going to change your name to UK365 guy? Negative. A brand is a brand. Coca-Cola don't change their brand when they go from country to country. My brand is my identity no matter kind of like where I live. This time I specifically chose a brand that would transcend Microsoft business applications. Statistically, you're going to have between 5 and 7 careers in your lifetime. That's the world we live in. So I've chosen a brand this time that will transcend, if you like, wherever my career goes. So it's not just tied. At all possible, avoid any Microsoft marks as part of your handle or your brand or your online identity, because you might not be working in there in the future, and all the effort that you've done will be thrown away when you just decide to change career where you don't necessarily need to do that, or you pivot. This is the story of my life. So I'm searching online for Mark Smith. There's over 900 million results. I look through page 1. Nope, I'm not there. Remember, I've been online for over 16 years creating content. Well over 16 years, actually, closer to 20. Page 2, nothing. I release content 5 times a week online, and there's nothing. Let's go to images. Bound to see a photo of me in here somewhere. Nada. Can't see anything in there that looks remotely like me. So this is a problem I was faced with, right? Is that even now, in searching my name online, it's not findable. I can't be identified online. Let's take a look at it now. As you can see, all the first results are all mine. They're all point to assets I've created. By the way, this little video was a year ago. I'm expecting it to be changed now. Page 3 is still me, predominantly all my content, if not all. If I look at images, it's quite clear. Not only is my name associated with me, but also a lot of the people that have been guests on my show or I've worked with. Videos, I'm showing up for videos as well. So as you can see, I took proactive measures with creating a brand. You can see the effect of that. Now, people say to me, yeah, but Mark, you've been doing this for years. Like, I'm just starting now. What am I going to do? This is going to be shocking. Well, let me tell you some information about what I've been doing for years. One thing, because it's not what you might think, and I'll go into those details. Here you can see my brand is consistent. If you go to Google, LinkedIn, Facebook groups, Facebook page, YouTube, you will see SoundCloud. You can see this consistency I've got across my brand identity. I'm not necessarily using the same photo for them all. The Facebook group, you can see there, I'm using, representing my national team in the jersey. Some I have these collared type, a tie and collar professional, some open collar, some pretty casual. Google Plus, look at that. Should take that off because that's dead, isn't it? Another thing that's dead in the last couple of years. But you can see there, helping people reach their full potential. I've got the various marks then across the community, whether it's Azure, Power Apps, Dynamics 365, etc. And so you can see that association. If someone looks at me straight away, they know, okay, I'm working with Microsoft technologies if they understand Microsoft technologies. In other words, they can go, is this person aligned with me? Do I want to engage? So think about that when it comes to your personal brand. So, comes back to you, who are you? What's inside your box? Is your box empty? Or what is the value you offer? Because creating a brand, becoming discoverable is all irrelevant if you have a poor brand. In other words, if you're not adding value. So what value do you offer? See, a lot of people think I've been branding heavily for years. I haven't. I've only started branding in the last 2 years that I've got serious. So if I basically, I'd been very successful in Australia. I'd grown a massive practice in that market. But during that time, 4 of my family members, in the last year and a half, 4 of my family members died unexpectedly. As I've said before, 2 died with brain cancers 9 days apart. My mother then died of some weird disease and similar to Parkinson's, but different. And my nephew committed suicide. So my wife, it was her father that also died, as well as the 3 members in my family, it totally caused us to reevaluate what was important in life. At the time, she was very successful working at Google in Sydney. And we started to go, what is the value in our life? In other words, we started asking life questions, feeling that life was short, and then which leads to, okay, what value are you providing to the world? What contribution are you making outside of just making money? And, being a kind of like a model of one's parents. In other words, grow up, learn for the first quarter of your third of your life, earn for the next third, retire for the next third. And I'd been reading works of Timothy Ferriss, for example, The 4-Hour Work Week, which he suggested you should retire, take mini retirements all the time. And so I started to develop, we decided, okay, let's take the money we had in savings for house and whatnot, and let's just go travel the world. And so that's what we did. And part of that, because I was leaving, if you like, a traditional job and where I had my brand associated, I wanted to make sure that I continued to engage in the community. I've always felt that if you get out of IT for 6 months, you're on the back foot pretty quickly. And I've always, wanted to stay ahead of the game. So what I started to do is that I already had a blog set up because I'd done it as even part of the travel and a few collections of posts I had done. But what I did, I started a podcast. And so the thing about a podcast, a blog, and YouTube, they're all what are called evergreen content. In other words, they're not just a point in time. They maintain their ranking in search engines, their relevance, and their context. So 2 years ago, I didn't have a podcast. 2 years ago, I started my podcast. 2 years ago, I was not producing any videos on a weekly basis. I started that, and 2 years ago, I was not mentoring anybody, and I started that. So don't think I've been doing this for years and years and years. A lot of this is stuff that I've just started in the last 2 years. So there's nothing stopping you starting today to build your brand. The sooner you start it, the sooner you will start to gather the momentum around your brand. If you want to transform your career, if you really want to construct the career of your future, you need to look at leveraging a personal brand and the value you bring. So what value will you give is my next question. What sets you apart from everyone else in Microsoft business applications? What value do you provide, and how does your value differ than other people in our industry? How do these benefits create connections? Ask yourself, is what I'm producing actually adding value? Or am I purely in a job, on a project, that as soon as this project's done, I'm on to the next project? And yes, I'm adding value to my employer, but am I adding value of influence to other people's lives, their careers, that type of thing beyond yourself? And is my brand in sync with how I am marketing myself or presenting myself? Because whether you like it or not, whether you create a personal brand or not, you have a brand. You are known for something. It's just whether it's the right thing you want to get known for. And if you're known for the wrong thing now's a good time to change and decide, what do you want to become known for? What do you want your brand to be? What value do you want to offer the world? There's nothing like a good time but now to start considering this. So you think 2 years ago, this didn't exist. So the Microsoft Business Application Podcast didn't exist. There's now 3 shows. The Dynamics 365 Practice Show, which I started with that, which ran, I was publishing fortnightly. So what I aimed is that I would never miss a beat. So I started publishing that every fortnight. Then I introduced the MVP show, which was a weekly show, which I publish. I've never missed a beat, up to 40-something episodes now on that. And then the Power 365 show was designed to address more and more the Microsoft staff that I was getting on my show. And so that one's fortnightly as well. So what it means between Dynamics 365 Practice Show and the Power 365 show, because they alternate weeks, basically I'm doing 2 podcasts live a week. And they don't just happen by accident. I plan that, but that's part of my, if you like, personal brand. Next, I've been doing weekly YouTubes now. I started off with interviewing MVPs. Now I'm doing currently a series on Microsoft MVP training. When that finishes, I've got another series ready to roll. Now, one thing I've said in one of my posts recently, or one of the videos, I can't remember where I said it, is that you're never good on day one, but you have to always have a day one. You have to start somewhere. So if you look at my original videos, there's some crappy work in it. Bad green screen effects, bad editing, bad audio, but I am learning, I am getting better, and I'm putting myself out there. And you can see these videos go out every Monday, and I have consistently planned or create that content. My blogs now, 2 blog posts a week. I try to aim for around 1,000 words, and discuss things that are kind of not the standard how-to stuff on the technology. I feel a lot of people are doing that type of content. I try to make my content a little bit outside the lines, if you like, a little outside the box, stuff that other people may be thinking, but not necessarily talking about or creating content about. And so that's, if you like, my strategy there. But I'm not done. What happened with Microsoft BizApp Summit, I decided I contacted Steve Mordua. In fact, we're on a call and we said, hey, why don't we live stream at BizApp Summit? So I was like, I sorted out everything I needed, got approval I needed, and we started live streaming. And what we learned so much from live streaming, and this is the thing, you're never good on day one, but we're learning. That has now rolled into every week, every Wednesday. In fact, later today, once again, we'll go live. You can see there, this one's from the screenshot from today. We do a live 1-hour session, Steve Mordua and I chatting around everything that's happening around Microsoft BizApps. That's now. Last week had a lot of chat. A lot of people jumped on. You know, there's a chat session there. You're interacting. We had guests create video content that was, you know, questions that had come from audiences, etc. This will be our 4th episode. What we're learning, right? That's 1 a week, another activity, another way of communicating and adding value to the community on Power Up Live. So how do you find what Seth Godin calls your art and becoming indispensable? As you can imagine, this is going to be one of the books for the week. This book here by Lynchpin is a book really about finding your art, finding about what makes you unique, finding about not being a pawn in somebody else's game, about identifying what do you want out of life, where do you want to go, and what is the value or the art, as he refers to it, are you going to bring into the world? When I was at Magnetism, if you wanted to get a job at Magnetism, it was a prerequisite before I would interview you that you had to read this book. I haven't made that, I didn't make that a rule while I was in Australia, but that was a rule then. And I've actually just reread this book again recently. And it is a fantastic book for you to kind of look at yourself, your career, and go, am I aligned with what actually spins my wheels? What makes me me? Am I out of line with it, doing just what the corporate machine wants, or am I in sync with where and the value I want to create in life and the interests that I have? Take a look at this book and see if it triggers something for you. The next thing around personal brand I want to talk about is your home and the importance of establishing your home. And what I'm talking about now is your digital home, right? Just like you have a physical home, you should have a digital home. And your digital home, like a traditional home, of course, needs to have an address. So where is me.com for you? Where is your website? And what does your home, your website, tell me about you? Will your home have street appeal? In other words, when somebody drives by, when your results pop up on a search engine, is the design and the theme something that you're proud of, or it's just something that's been tacked together? Are you easy to find? Are you listed in the directories, the addresses? Does your search engine optimization make sure you rank? Do you have a .com domain, as I've talked about? Is it a place you're proud to point people to? Go check out my blog on X. Go check out my blog on Y. Does it add value because of the content that's on there? Or is it run down? Are there broken links, old wallpaper, lack of responsiveness, slow loading? Or is your site covered in crap? What do I mean by that? Have you decided, oh, I'm going to monetize my website, so I'm going to put ads, I'm going to put Google ads on my website, and I'm going to try and make money? And so I go to these websites of a lot of people in our community, and all I see is ad for this, ad for that, ad for something else. And I'm like, where is the content? You're not a marketing company. You're a content creator. You're adding value to the community, and all I'm seeing is these ads all over it. Listen, the amount of money you'll make on those ads are pretty negligible. I've not had one person that says, man, you wouldn't believe that covers a cup of coffee a week for me. Yet, it's a massive distraction when you cover your site with advertising crap. I suggest maybe you don't want to do that. Your website's the most important tool in establishing your online identity. Does it reflect you or the new you that you want to be? Because it should. You should be just as house proud of your house as your website. Your website should reflect who you are. Dress appropriately. Make sure the design reflects your personality as part of your website, right? Just like you would your home, just like you'd be house proud of your home, you should be house proud of your digital home. And your digital home is what I call the hub. It's the center of your digital universe. And the thing is, you must own your hub. I see too many people not owning their hub. They let other people own their hub or their home. What do I mean by this? Imagine here we have a hub and spoke on a wheel. In the center of this wheel is your home. This is where you have your website, right? Where people can find you. Think it's the center of your digital universe. Your center of your digital universe shouldn't be a social media platform. It shouldn't be YouTube. It shouldn't be Twitter. It shouldn't be Facebook. The center of your digital universe as somebody that's a professional creating a digital brand should be your own website. I think you get that I'm kind of really stressing this. Own your own home. Own your own domain name. Make sure it's a .com if possible. Don't give it to WordPress.com. That's their site. They have their rules. I've seen people's Facebook groups get shut down. I've seen YouTube accounts get shut down. I've seen people get kicked off Twitter. Why? Because they're all owned by somebody else. They're not owned by you. But if you own your own website, you host your own website, they are owned by you, and therefore you have control over what goes on that site. So own your own website, own your own hosting account, invest in yourself, right? Make sure it's all about you. I'll tell you what happened with me, right? At Magnetism, when I left that company, all my blog posts, I actually wanted to reference one of my old blog posts about LinkedIn, which I've just done a post that's going out this week. And I wanted to reference it because I wanted to show that not much had changed. But guess what? I don't own Magnetism anymore. So my blog post, it wasn't there. It wasn't findable. But when I left Magnetism, they owned all that content I created because I didn't create it under my own personal brand. So if your company has you writing blog posts for them, make sure that you're allowed to put it on your own blog as well, so that your content, no matter what job you're in, stays under your authorship as well on your own website. When I went to SMS, SMS was the company I was working for in Australia, SMS Management Technology, and I had every staff member was required of mine to write one blog post a week. Sorry, a month, one blog post a month, my bad. Well, once my team was up to 70, as you can imagine, I had more. I could do 2 blog posts going live a day on my website. Now, one thing I said to each one of my staff members, you can take this blog post that you're writing for the company, which is part of their employment contract. They had it written into anybody that joined. That was part of their employment agreement. It was one of their KPIs and metrics that they were allowed to also put the blog on their own personal website. Now, I'm glad I did that because SMS doesn't even exist anymore. The blog, which was the Center of Excellence blog, it doesn't exist anymore. And so all those people, though, that put it on their own home, of course, they own their own home and therefore control that. My recommendations are as follows. Build a WordPress site. Well, my first recommendation is never use GoDaddy. GoDaddy are thieves. Cost me thousands of dollars in their thievery. If you buy a domain name on them, they will move heaven and earth to make sure you never can transfer your domain name to somebody else. They are a fraudulent-based company. Do not trust them. That's my rant about GoDaddy. Anyhow, a domain name costs $11.99 per year. Now, that's one feed of Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? One box of KFC covers your domain name for a year. Next, I recommend, of course, build on WordPress. 60% of market share is owned by WordPress for all websites in the world. Let that sink in. 60% of all websites in the world run on WordPress. The next closest competitor only has a 6% market share, right? Why do I like WordPress? Because they have plugins. They have plugins to Dynamics 365. They're search engine friendly. They are secure. And they have a great support and community just supporting that technology. You can get themes, etc., that are on point. So start with WordPress. It's 100% free on your own website. Next, I recommend a hosting company called Bluehost. I've got multiple websites. I use Bluehost. How much does Bluehost cost? A cup of coffee a month. $3.95 is the price that it costs me to host NZ365 Guy. And guess what? You get HTTPS, so you get a secure sockets layer connection, meaning a requirement of Google is that your site nowadays must have HTTPS. It must be secure if you want to rank in search engines. Bluehost give you that for free. They give you your digital certificate for free as part of that account. Okay? Don't think you're going to host on Blogger or any other of the other platforms out there. Use them as traffic drivers to you, but make sure you own your own home. Next, when we look about social, then you use Twitter to drive traffic to your home. You use YouTube to drive traffic. Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all channels to drive traffic to the center of your universe. Make sure your home, once again, that you can be house proud and it looks amazing. Think of Twitter as a stream of consciousness, right? It's the water cooler of communications, of social media. So in other words, you jump in there, you have a chat with the people around the water cooler at the moment. In other words, you have a look at a few tweets, but you're not going to look at every tweet. If everybody looked at every tweet I produce around 800 to 900 a month, mate, you wouldn't have time to do anything else. It'd be a waste of your time. But I don't expect people to read all my tweets. I expect them only to read the ones when they jump in and engage and go on their merry way. If we look at YouTube, the beauty of YouTube, it's evergreen. It's the second biggest search engine on the internet. So the videos you create in 3 years' time can still potentially all of a sudden become extremely popular because it's just like a search engine. The next one is Facebook. Once again, a stream of consciousness. And you need to separate out in your mind the difference between your private Facebook page with your friends and family and then a Facebook page like mine, facebook.com/NZ365 Guy, is about me, my personal brand, and the content I'm creating. It's not about, me hanging out with my family for the weekend. It's not about that, right? It's a separation. But I'm on Facebook because it's still the biggest social media platform in the world. And people that are interested in my stuff are on that site. LinkedIn, of course, is a no-brainer. LinkedIn is two things. It's a stream of consciousness with posts, right, and the feed, and the algorithms are changing all the time. But also, you can publish articles up there. I suggest never publish an article up there unless it's already been at least a week on your own website. The reason is when the search engine looks at which is the oldest article, it'll rank yours as the true authorship. So drive traffic to or promote your site over LinkedIn. But of course, LinkedIn will promote your article within their network because it's content that they want to promote on their channel. Pinterest is another area that I've not done enough in, but it's the search engine of images. Once again, it's evergreen. So I've started seeding stuff up there, logos, Microsoft brand, etc., about my posts. That once again, and it's driving traffic. According to my stats on my website, Pinterest is sending me traffic in line with my brand. Next, use Buffer, right? I use Buffer to share everything. The reason is that I am very planned in what I do. My blog posts that are going to will be published later this week were written a week and a half ago. They were edited. The images were created for them. They were set up and scheduled last weekend and now ready to go out this week. Same with all my other posts. They are scheduled, right? Yesterday, the entire day, I was at user group. So what if content needed to go out while I'm doing my other work, my other life? I schedule everything. Most of my content always goes live 5 a.m. New Zealand time, because that's my home country, and it's where the sun rises around the world. So a day starts really in New Zealand. And how I know this, in the year 2000, we were one of the first countries to have all the media on us because that was where the day started. And so ultimately I capture the sun as it goes around the world by releasing at that time. Make sure you publish consistently because your audience will expect it as you create that content. Next, invest in hashtags. When I say invest in, create them. Notice how I've got hashtag 90DayMC because that's unique. Even the new live stream, Power Up Live, it's a hashtag. The reason is hashtags are one of the most important ways of standing out and becoming searchable. So I try to build that in to all the content creation that I do. I'm constantly surprised at how many events don't have hashtags so that people can talk about the event. Even Microsoft, they release, BizApps next year. Where's the hashtag for BizApps 2020? If you've announced the event, you should have announced the hashtag, in my belief. I could go so much more into this, but we're going to run out of time if I do. Okay, let's look at content creation. Look at this quote here from Wikipedia. Content creation is a contribution of information to any media, and most especially to digital media for an end user audience in a specific context. Okay, it's easy to put yourself in these shoes. Our context is Microsoft BizApps, and of course you're working out what your specialty area is going to be within that. The next thing, so let's break this down. So first of all, let's look at the audience. Who are they? So ask, if you want to understand who your audience is, here's some great questions from the Empathy Map Canvas, which is part of IDEO or design thinking. Who are we empathizing with? Who's part of that audience? What do they need or do? What do they see? What do they say? What do they hear? And how does it make them feel? What are the pains and gains that you're solving with the content you're creating? This is a whole day lesson just on this concept of empathy mapping. But I just wanted to put that out there as kind of a point where, you can go into more detail. Like I'm very clear who my audience is. My audience, when I create content, I don't create content for other MVPs. I create content for consultants and career changers, people in an industry. That's, for me, that's one of my people groups or one of the audiences I create content for. The next, I create content for people that work for system integrators, specifically in Microsoft BizApps, and specifically ISVs, independent software vendors, once again, in Microsoft BizApps. Those are my three audiences that I focus on, that I target. And when I create content, I'm always thinking of those audiences that I'm creating for. Okay, what type of content? So people go, well, that's great, Mark, but I can never think of ideas of what to write on or what creative content is unique. So I decided when I was putting this course together for you is, well, I do a bit of brainstorming and a bit of thinking. And this is what I came up with of what type of contents you could create. First one, you could do code reviews. If you're a coder and this is aligned with your T skill set, you could become a reviewer. You could offer people, listen, I'll review your code. Daryl Labar, another MVP in America, just did this recently on the last 12 months. You can offer bug support. Ask people, listen, you got a bug you can't work out? Flick it to me on my blog. I'll put a form up there. Tell me about it, and I'll see if I can help you out, maybe in forums. code snippets. You could provide code snippets, put them up on GitHub and make them available to the community. You could create tools. This is what we see with Tangi and the XRM toolbox, and all the tools that have been created now are, once again, content that has been created. You could design apps, right? You might have a specific skill around designing the user interfaces of apps, data models of apps. You could actually provide your thinking, your expertise in content form around that. Community resources. You could start creating community resources. You know, how do you run a user group? You might have an opinion on that. That's a community resource you could put out there. How do you run a hackathon? That's a community resource you could put out there to grow the community if you've got expertise in that area. You could write a book. One of the people on this mentoring program, his wife, last year published a book on Dynamics 365. Absolutely fantastic. You could write case studies. You don't have to be all official, but you could write case studies around projects, etc., you've been associated with. You can create a newsletter. One of the MVPs out of Italy, he has a newsletter all focused around Microsoft business applications. That's a contribution he's chosen. You can put on an event, run a Dynamics 365 Saturday, lead a user group, run a Power Platform happy hour. Any number of events, hackathons you could run, app in a day, flow in a day, dashboard in a day, all opportunities. You could become a speaker at events. You could write a review or Microsoft Watch. This is something that Steve Mordew does a lot of. He looks at what Microsoft's doing and then has an opinion on it. So you could write an opinion piece on changes that Microsoft are making in the market. You could have a podcast. You could create videos and publish them on various video platforms. You can find collaborators and work together. Man, I'm always looking for collaborators. I'm always looking for people that go, hey, can we do something together? Can we work on something unique and different that, you know, neither of us might have done before? Right now, the whole live streaming is a collaboration between Steve Mordew and me. We've been having one-on-one calls about an hour in length for the last year, and we just decided, why don't we put a camera on while we have our calls and our discussions? We've been having these discussions each week as we kind of bounce off ideas. He's in the US, me in the UK or Europe. And so think about collaborations you can have with people. Could you write a white paper? You got deep expertise and research in a specific area. Could you create training content? You know, what the flow, Eliza Benitez, she creates a lot of flow training content, puts them up on YouTube. And if all that else fails, you could write a blog. You could create blog posts. So I hope I've given you in those 18 areas a whole bunch of content that you could come up with. But you might say to me, well, what topics though do I focus on? I can never think of a topic. Let me think of some topics for you. What are the day-to-day challenges you come across? What about exam preps? Have you seen an MVP out there that writes a lot of help tips on exam preps? Are you an expert on flow? You could create content, Canvas apps, model-driven apps. You could create content, portals, sales, field service, project service automation, tips, how-tos, any how-to series, practice management, methodologies, training, talent, finance operations, and the list goes on. Like, this was just my quick stab at it. As you can see, there is so much that you can write content on. There's a never-ending supply of what you can write content on. It just creates you need to create a space of where you can think of ideas, come up with ideas, and then develop those ideas. So where do you put it out? I say always publish at your home. Always publish your content on your site, and then look at where else can that be shared. So when I look at sharing, I look, of course, at social media. So I put a blog post up and then I share it to Twitter. I share it on YouTube. I share it on Facebook. I share it on LinkedIn, and I share it to Pinterest. And when you look at, or what is the frequency you should be running, take a look at this chart I've created. So if you were to share on a social schedule on publishing, you can post it to Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, as you can see, Instagram, all these different channels you can post to. But then what happens, you'll notice at Twitter, you can post the same day, the day after, the week after, the month after. Twitter is, remember, a stream of consciousness. You could do it more frequently. LinkedIn is really, you should post only once, and then you want to make sure that a lot of people communicate and engage. Facebook, maybe a couple of times. Most channels are once off, right? I'm not going to repost a YouTube clip that I've already posted because it's up there. It's evergreen content. Medium, you can see post a week after the post, you could actually take your content and put it up on Medium as another channel, right? So there's lots of options here. You can decide how would that work on Snapchat? How would it work on GitHub, etc., SoundCloud, or any of the other channels? So you might be going, well, how do you run this? Well, let's look at how I run my content creation. I have this content calendar. If you take a look at this, this is actually my real content calendar for April, May, and June. You can see there week 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you can see that there's 5 days, Sunday, for example, if I look at week 4 in April, Sunday the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 20, blah, blah, blah. And then I've got, what is it I'm creating? A BP stands for blog post. A video, of course, is a video, 2 podcasts, video, blog post, video. So you can see if there's gaps, that means I didn't post. So you can see in May is when I officially kicked off doing blog posts. So now you can see all my blog posts are full. It's got the names of who were on my podcast. Which show was it? Was it the P365 show or the D3 the Power Up show, or was it the MVP show? You can see there my topic and posts per quarter. So I aim to do on learning 4 posts per quarter, on ISV 5 posts, Power Platform 5 posts, career development 4 posts, mixed reality 4, and AI 4. I'm actually dropping down on the AI and mixed reality because I'm not hands-on enough with that and spending more time in some of those other areas. But that is my real life scheduling calendar. And as a rule, I'm operating between 4 and 6 weeks in advance in creating my content. That gives you a bit of insight. See, I don't allow my brand to happen by mistake. It happens on purpose and on a schedule. And you might like, well, that's too restrictive. Well, for me, it's amazingly freeing because I can go and take days off. And, you know, I don't work on Fridays at all. I don't do anything on Fridays that is work related. I just have the day entirely off just to think. And the beauty is the thinking is so many of my ideas come to me. Now, I couldn't do that if I was like, I have a post that I haven't written. I have a tweet I haven't done. No, I have everything operating on a schedule, as you can see here. So next thing around creating personal brand, I know I'm feeding you like a fire hose here, so you might want to go back and watch the video. I could talk on all these for ages. Let's take a look at LinkedIn. Some things that you need to get it right on LinkedIn. So what does your LinkedIn profile look at? First of all, do you have a unique URL? So notice mine there, linkedin.com/in/NZ365 guy. If you searched on LinkedIn for NZ365 guy, you're going to find me. If you're going to search for Mark Smith, you're going to find a lot of Mark Smiths. Next, my name's clearly there. Where I'm located, clearly there, London, United Kingdom, and it's an all-star profile, meaning you need to get your profile to an all-star, meaning fill out anything that is missing from your profile. Next, looking at your profile picture. Is it a happy face? Make sure it's a happy face. Make sure teeth are exposed. I could do a whole section just on this photo or just on the importance of photo. By showing teeth, psychologists show us that you are considered more friendly, not baring your teeth, but a nice smile indicates an openness or an inviting in. Make sure you're in professional attire. Just because you love surfing or skydiving, there you go, Patty, one for you, buddy, doesn't mean that that's what should be in your professional profile. Remember, LinkedIn is a professional network. Reflect it. Notice I've got a tie on here. The other thing, notice that my background doesn't have any crap in it apart from NZ365 guy. Don't make it look like you were standing in a hugging photo with somebody else, or there's a group photo and you've just cropped your photo out. Listen, everybody has a mobile phone. Look at a window, get in front of it, take a photo in a professional attire, and you'll look a heck of a lot better than a lot of the rubber. Don't put logos in here. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Absolute fail. And then make sure your header banner is once again in keeping with your brand. Headline is the most important thing when you become findable. In fact, if you take a look at mine, I've actually updated it even more since more recent learning I've done on this. There's a limit to the number of words that you can use here. Make sure you use them. This shouldn't be your job title. Your headline should be about where you're going and what value you bring. Notice mine here, Microsoft Biz Apps, Cloud, Dynamics 365, Consultant, Freelancer, Management, Coach, pre-sales, MVP, MCT. If people are searching for MV, like normally I'd like Microsoft, most valued professional or Microsoft certified trainer, but because people searching for these will know what these mean, they would put that in there. But it means all those are keywords for finding me. Make sure you have keyword rich your title. I had a guy that I coached last year from, I don't know, somewhere up the country here in England. This is before I actually moved to England. And when he was like, what's wrong? Well, I can't seem to get jobs. And I know my job is going to come to an end shortly. And I looked at it, and his job profile and his job title here was nothing about where he wanted to go. It talked about what he was. I'm an accountant. Wow, exciting. And he wanted to move into project management and things like that. Remember, this is not your job title. This is not what's on your CV. This is not what's on, what your company gave you as a job title. This should illustrate, using keywords, your skill sets, your passion, the value that you bring. Let's look at location and industry. Make sure you have your location in here. It's important to get an all-star profile, but people often will search. Like, notice at this location, my actual location in London is NW61BD is my postcode. So why do I have W21AE? Because that's central London. I want people searching in central London. If they need to reach me, I can travel. I'm okay with central London. So therefore, that is why I put that. If you're going to move to a new country, update your code here to the country or the geography you want to go to. So when people search for you in their area, your profile comes up. What industry do you work in? Specify. It's important because a lot of people search by our industry. Make sure these contact details there. What's your company website? What's your blog? What's your phone number? What's your Twitter handle? What's your instant messenger? If people want to get you that way, pop it in there. What's your date of birth? Put it in the credit. But I'm quite happy with birth dates to be up there, right? I don't mind somebody saying happy birthday to me every now and again. At least someone says it, even if it's on social media. And then this is what it looks like, right? Now, notice here, people can click on these links then. What I often find intriguing, notice my address there. This is actually my home address on my profile. The amount of people that, will reach out to me and go, oh, can you give me your email address, that are connected to me? I'm like, man, it's up there on LinkedIn. Learn how to use it. It's on my profile. You can find it if you go and have a look. Of course, the address is up there so people can send me cool shirts that I had to wear in my videos. This one's sponsored here from, who is it from? Kingsway Soft. I always try to wear a new video on each of my YouTube clips. So that's where people send them. Anyhow, your professional summary, then you should view it. Does it look nice and structured? Can you see here, a nice breakdown of the about you section? That, for my one there, that uses every single character I can possibly use. I think it's around 2,000 characters is the maximum you can have. But once again, it talks about all my kind of specialty areas because this is a second big keyword area when someone's searching on your profile to give you a history. You can decide what you turn on and off under experiences. Do you want your education to show, your certification, that type of thing? If you have a look at every time I work for a different company, these are the things I look at. I always open with, what was the company about? Magnetism is a New Zealand company that is founded as a boutique Microsoft Dynamics CRM consultancy in 2005. In this time, I was CEO and grew it to over 20 staff, right? So that gives context of the business that I was in. People might not know. Then I talk about what my role was in it. Then I talk about what my achievements were. What were the big standout things, right? Dynamics CRM, ISV solution certified for CFMD. ISV Silver, Microsoft Silver, Gold Partner. What else did I get there? I was a president, chairman in New Zealand Chamber of Commerce. I mentored a team of university students in the Imagine Cup in New Zealand for Microsoft. Those are the highlights of my period of 7 years and 3 months at that company that I founded. That's the kind of structure I go for each of my jobs. Make sure you get recommendations. How many have you received? How many have you given? A consultant these days should have at least more than 15 received recommendations on their profile. Minimum of 15. I've been slack in the last 2 years. I haven't really added to this, and I should have. It's because I've not been working on full-time projects. But I need to get back. And notice also, are you giving them? Don't really go for a give to get type thing because it looks a bit disingenuous. So I always try to make sure the people that I've received them from is not somebody I've given it to. It's not always the case because some of my staff, and I've got a smattering. I've got staff members that talk about me being their boss. I've got customers that talk about me working on projects for them. I've got my management talking about me. And so think about your recommendations, right? What are you wanting to show? I want to show up leadership, down leadership, and customer engagement in my recommendations. Make sure skills and endorsements are great for helping to up your profile. They're pretty meaningless otherwise. And then look at what does your public profile, what do you want to display on that public profile? Once again, your image, edit your URL, that's where you do it up there on the public profile. View your profile's public visibility options and decide what you want displayed. Notice I have turned off projects because my entire LinkedIn profile will be all the projects that I've ever been on, and I just couldn't be able to, you know, fill that out. How do you do day-to-day LinkedIn? This is how I do it. I go up, I connect. I always add a note. Here's an example. This is connecting to the country lead of UK. Send an invite, right? Every day that you meet somebody new, whether online or in person, you should make sure before your head hits the pillow that you send, it was great meeting you today. If I can assist you with anything, please let me know. If you want more information, please let me know. Now, what does this mean? How's this work for me? Yes, I got over 11,000 connections now on LinkedIn. I always say to my wife, man, you've met new people today. Why aren't you connecting them on LinkedIn? The world is made up of what are called loose ties. Not good friends will actually help you in your career. It'll be the loose connections for somebody that knows that you could help on a project. And with that, I'm over time, so we don't have time for questions. I know I've stacked so much in there. I feel like I do a whole day course just on this topic and expand on, like I didn't even address Facebook pages. I didn't even get into YouTube seriously. There's so many other things that you could consider about building your personal brand. I hope you found that helpful. I know it's a lot to cover. Maybe watch the video again. Thanks, everybody. I'll take your questions inside the Facebook group. Make sure you get the assignment, fill out metrics that matter. Talk to you all soon. Bye.